This is going to be a doozy today. This is a woo-woo word Wednesday. I hope people show up, but as usual, if they don't, I will absolutely put it on my Reels page or it'll be in posting. But this is a woo-woo word Wednesday, and today the woo-woo word. Well, before I get started with that, there are a couple of things that I wanted to chat about. One of the things that I wanted to talk about today was the ism through age and what that looks like, and especially as it relates to the card that I got today, the Hangman, which I really like this. I think I've been sharing with you all this particular deck because it's been really, how would I say, it's been bringing up a lot of images because of the approach of this. And so if you'll notice, it's like you are the hanged man or the hanged person or the hanged they or the hanged human. And this is a card that traditionally looks like a guy. He's got this figure 4 configuration on his legs, which is an interesting symbol as well. You've got I was just showing this card because I'm doing the woo-woo word, which is vote. That is the woo-woo word of the day. But before I started with the woo-woo word, I wanted to share something that kind of just has been occurring to me recently. And this is for anybody who finds themselves, particularly if you're a femme embodied person, however you classify that, and you have the opportunity to to grow older and hopefully more mature, because, there are a lot of old people that's walking around, they just old. They don't have any real insight to share. They're not interested in sharing, actually. And they don't even have the emotional intelligence to transmit some of this information. But that's not the type of person that I'm striving to be. And one of the things that I've learned about a lot of things is that we put a lot of pressure on ourselves to make these really good choices and decisions about how we interact with people, particularly when we're talking about issues like racism and sexism and ableism and classism and nationalism and all these isms, right? And these are really big topics that can actually only, not even I know, they can only be, change can only be achieved by a practice. It has to be habitual because it's so systematic. You can't do it one time or recognize it one time or even multiple times and think that anything is gonna change. It has to be such a habit that you do it without thinking about it because it's good for you. And I've mentioned this a couple of times before in other, if not woo words, other situations in which I've been trying to talk to myself through talking to you all, the two of you. Thank you so much for joining me, or one of you now. But like when you were learning how to brush your teeth, you didn't really want to do it. You didn't want to do it. You were trying to come up with all these reasons why you were going to fool your parent, or make your bed, or wash your face, or take a bath, or go to the bathroom. There are all these things that are good for you to be able to participate in society that necessitate a doing of them over and over and over again. And they can run the gamut from establishing boundaries and not just saying I have this boundary, but really following through with the action of the boundary making. Or it could be, boundaries is pretty much the huge one, because I was just going to give an example of, basically another boundary, but I realized that to elicit the kind of change that is required, it takes practice. It takes doing it over and over again, where it's not even something that you're thinking about necessarily. It's really just a knee-jerk reaction. You're not even, it's like driving a car. When you first started driving a car, you're remembering each step of the process. But now that you have practiced it enough, you can do other things, because that's what is going to be, again, required, because you can't focus your entire energy on the task of like combating ageism or racism or colorism or texturism or any of these isms, because you also have to feed yourself. You also have to interact with your friends and family. You also have to travel. You also have to do these other things that are required in this life. But those kinds of shifts don't need to go by the wayside. So I'm experiencing a lot of shifts recently that are the beneficiaries of a lot of this practice that I've been doing. One, or the main one, has been boundaries. Like, I have definitely let individuals talk to me greasy, try to speak down to me, and I've decided that that's a boundary that I am not going to tolerate being crossed, because I have the benefit of experience and expertise, and if I don't respect it, then nobody else will. And I respect the fact that I've been learning from my experience, that I've been learning from my mistakes, I've been learning from my community, I've been imparting those lessons into my daily life in small and large ways, but habitually, day after day after day after day. And oftentimes what happens when you're doing that, there is a critical mass. And so there's a lot of shifts. So I think I mentioned to you all before that I've been getting the Tower a lot in my readings, which the traditional one, it has this like tower getting struck by lightning, y'all. People is jumping out the tower. It looked crazy. It looked like everything's going down. But one of the things that I've always known about the Tower is that it's a breaking down to build up. But one thing that I don't think I really understood about the Hangman, which is another card that I've been getting, until I saw this image, because usually with the Hangman, it's a picture of a person being hung, like they're just upside down. It's kind of giving like semi-martyrdom crucifixion vibes, but they're upside down. Apparently that was like another mode of, I don't know if it was, I don't think it was capital punishment, but I do think that it was like a way of like a public embarrassment, if I can remember correctly. But it's on the gallows. A man is hung on a towel cross gallows, leaves still on the wood, indicating life and regeneration. So this is what it usually looks like. It looks like that. It's got a halo on it. The man wears red pants of fearlessness and a blue shirt of intuition. A golden nimbus is encircling his head for prophecy. His face is calm and serene. The Hangman knew what was going to happen to him before it happened. And, that card has always indicated a shifting of perspective. That's kind of like its traditional meaning. that's kind of like the soft lob. But this, I've told a bunch of you all before, I do a lot of different sources of research, which is one of the reasons why I think that so many artists, we'll just put it like that, so many artists get caught in a feedback loop, is because a lot of the information that they're getting is from the internet. So it starts to get distilled into one kind of source based on your algorithm. I know that this happens to me a lot. I mean, if it happens to me, I'm sure it happens to you. I noticed that there are people that I follow that I like, I'm not, or that I don't follow, that I like their posts. And I see some of my other friends have already liked it. So I know we're in the same kind of echo chamber. I know this. But if I want to push beyond that, I'm going to have to give myself an opportunity to stumble upon something that's not necessarily marketed to me, that actually might have a little bit more of a hardcore approach. Now, with that said, I did get this book from a member of my community. Thanks, Jillian Hernandez. And this one is Benabel, I don't know if I can't remember if she's a woman or a man or femme-bodied, but I think she's femme-bodied. And man, she be real hardcore about it. Some of the stuff is it kind of hurt my feelings a little bit. But one of the things that I forgot about this in kind of pulling myself away from this source of research or a reference tool, even though I usually cycle back around, but I haven't been really using this as a reference tool as much because it is so hardcore. I mean, look at this shit. This shit is I got notes. You see, I got the notes. I really be studying this like a real book and stuff. I mean, I got scribbles in this dancery. Anyway, one of the things that I forgot about that hangman that I like combining with the imagery of this is that I like that I'm not looking at the person. I'm not an observer. I am observing. If I'm to look at this card, because you see it's let's see if I can make it a little bit. These are mushrooms and ferns and stuff, but you can tell this is basically it's upside down, right? So you are suspended. So there's kind of two traditional ideas about it. One is that it's a good idea to change your perspective, hence the hangman, the upside down. And the other is this suspension, especially the more, I guess, negative or not as beneficial read of it is that you are suspended. You haven't made a decision, and it's really up to you to move forward with that. The knowledge of that shifted perspective, you don't just have to hang there. That's a moment in the process. The hanged part is the requirement of being, and it's kind of it connects to that whole notion of being hung out to dry. You kind of feel like a martyr. And that's one of the, also one of the traditional meanings. But I liked what I read about it in this deck. Transform your world by transforming your perspective. So absolutely connected to, that notion, that traditional notion. But one of the things that I thought was really interesting is that the author suggests that perspective shifts are seismic. Do not be fooled into thinking that simply acknowledging a different point of view is enough. Your world should be turned on end when you are through with this project. If not, go back to more exploration. And I agree with this. But one of the things that I'm realizing is that in any shift of, in any seismic shift, it is not instantaneous. And that's when it's clarified. That's when it's clarified that these incremental, habitual shifts in perspective are helpful. I'm going to say that again for myself and you all too. Is that we want to make these changes in our world, right? We want to make these changes in our world. We talk about it all the time on social media, the internet, various corners, in our communities and everything. We talk about this desire to make things different. But it's hard to make the kinds of choices in the seismic moment if you are not, in fact, being habitual about working that muscle. You know, when I would teach, talk, and I've mentioned this before, but it bears repeating based on the fact that this hangman came up. I would tell the students, the young people, usually they were high schoolers, and I would be asked to speak with them and tell them about my creative experience, my creative process. And I had this whole thing, the ABCs of success. And the first one was A, advocate for adventure. And it was this opportunity for you to create adventure in your life, meaning to go down a path that is not typical. Like even one of the things that it says travel to a place you've never been. It says push further than you ever have. You cannot simply do this as a thought exercise. You're going to have to get more active and creative. And I agree with this. But I think that there's something, and I love that it's the mushroom. It's the mushroom that is being depicted, because it's this kind of like, these spores and how they communicate. That in fact is very subtle. That when you decide that you're not going to go the same route that you always go home, that you don't talk to the same person that you always talk to, that you don't have the same kind of conversation that you have with the same person that you always talk to, that you practice these small adventures, these shifts in perspectives. I just saw another friend of mine and colleagues post that how important it is to talk to strangers, that it does something for our health. And I think that the reason why it's important to talk to strangers, is because it helps shift the perspective. You don't know this person. You don't have any context beyond what they're talking to you right now. And it gives you this opportunity to exist in the moment. And these are the kinds of things that are, when they're practiced, when the seismic shift happens, you're not in paralysis. You're not in paralysis. Like when I, and I've mentioned this to, a couple of times because this is my situation right now. And I have to find a way to, and actually not even I have to find it, I've been finding a way to like change my perspective on it. But like, you know, I'm a little like my primary source of income dried up overnight. And a year ago, this would have devastated me for sure. But I knew that I was going to have to shift perspective on this because as a person who is experiencing the effects of the ism, sexism, texturism, colorism, ageism, that ageism is some real shit. Especially as a woman. It's so weird to like witness it happening because I feel so much more confident, so much more secure in my practice, my creative practice, than I did 10, 12, 15 years ago. And it's harder to create those opportunities, even like in spite of the fact that I am better at what I do. But I've been really deciding through this symbology of something like the hangman, I've been finding ways to habitualize a shift in perspective so that when the thing happens, the seismic change happens. Yes. So like when the seismic event happens, I've been practicing changing my perspective in these like unrelated ways so often that now I'm doing it. I quickly shift into it because I've been doing it in so many different ways, like deciding that, like, let's say you ask somebody to do something, and before, if they didn't do it, I would take it so personally. Or if somebody, withheld information from me that was about my character or about my overall interaction that felt disruptive to them, if they didn't tell me, I would internalize it. And I'm shifting that perspective. Like, why does it have to be about me? Not saying that what they're saying isn't accurate in some way, because it's just like a clock. It's even a broken clock is right twice a day. But I don't have to internalize the faultiness of when it's not correct. This is a change in perspective. This is a shift, because the thing that when I went back to my hardcore reference, it says, however, the message of the card is that the seeker is right. The seeker must trust him or herself. He or she has wisdom. And that's really important when we're talking about things like ageism. We have to trust that we have the wisdom, that in spite of this structural element, that we have the wisdom to create outside, in, around, under, on the side, adjacent to, through the structure. We have the wisdom to do it, but we really have to believe it. Like, we don't have to be put in a corner. We don't have to be relegated to the outside or the margins. We actually don't. because we have the wisdom and the experience to know that actually our ideas are centrally located. It only looks on the edge to somebody that doesn't shift their perspective. So I wanted to share that first off as a reminder, because I'm going to read it again. It says, traditional theme of the hangman is that of self-sacrifice. The mob has metaphorically hung the seeker because they do not approve of the seeker's belief or what the seeker has done. However, the message of the card is that the seeker is right. The seeker must trust him or herself. He or she has the wisdom. And the other thing that I forgot about this, well, not that I forgot, but it was recalled to me, this nimbus, this halo, is reminding the seeker that the mob's approval is not needed. Furthermore, the Tau cross formed by the legs of the hangman indicates the balance between dominion and slavery, the 0 and the 1. We live in a digital age, truly. We've always lived in a digital age. And when I say digital age, I mean the essential digital age of the 0 and the 1. That they only look like opposites.
Unknown caller.
What the hell? They only look like opposites. They only look like a dichotomy. But it's through the interaction with the 0 and the 1, the nothing and the something, the void and the all. Right? That creates an experience. So it's telling us that, that the Tau cross formed by the legs of the hangman indicates a balance between dominion and slavery. Because make no mistakes, we're all slaves. We are all slaves to a physical experience. We're not able to just bust out of this unless we don't want to have a lived experience anymore. There are certain things that we are enslaved to. We are enslaved to breathing, heart pumping. You got a problem with your kidneys, you find out you're a slave to your kidneys. You find that out very quickly. But there's also dominion at the same time that can exist. That in the same breath that we are dominated by the ism, there's also this opportunity created by the friction of the experience, the adversity. So I had to get that out of the way because I needed that for myself. I hope it was helpful in some way. But now to the woo-woo word of Wednesday. I finally got my woo-woo word on a Wednesday. So the woo-woo word is a word that like I said, I only do the ones that I hear a lot. I read a lot, I hear a lot, I see a lot, just like it's freaking everywhere, this word. Because next week, this is when the rubber hits the road. When the shit hits the fan. When the 0 meets the 1. Vote. Vote. That is the woo-woo word for today. Vote. Now, I don't know if you all know this, but I'm going to share it because, I don't need... I'm the hangman. I don't need your approval. I know what I'm saying is right. I know that I have the wisdom on this. However you perceive this, however you shift your perspective that feels right to you based on your own wisdom is up to you. but I will share this. I don't vote. I actually think that any marginalized group should actually hold the vote ransom. I don't think black people should vote for the next 5 years. Imagine what would happen. And it wouldn't be any worse than what's happening. Guaranteed. I'm serious. Because, and in fact, when I hip you all to this etymological tarot, it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 card spread. We've got a lot of this 8 card spread, which 8 is longevity. Okay, turn that thing on that side. It's feeding itself Ouroboros. It's referencing the cycle. It's referencing the cycle not just as a circle, but that it's a helix. And this, is we know, is a hugely, like, we all know that these orbits aren't perfect circles, that they are elongated. They do have, what do they call that? Lemniscate, I think that's what it's called. Like in the, like over the magician's head in the traditional card, or over the figure who is taming the lion in the strength card. They both have that. Or the 2 of Pentacles where they're juggling. It's not just like that. It is like 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. It's got a different kind of rhythm. It's a pull, push, up, down, crossing. It's giving you a little bit more depth to the symbol. But it's an 8 card spread. And the first spread I always, give the definition as it was at least introduced in the mid 15th century or the mid 1400s, because we're in the 21st century, but it's 2020. So anyway, you all know how that works. Formal expression of one's wish or choice with regard to a proposal, candidate, etc. Now, not only am I having this experience as a citizen of being exposed to the word vote because of the timing and all that kind of stuff, but I'm also trying to win this little contest that's a vote. And I've been doing there's been a lot of voting going on. There's a lot of voting. Like, I voted for a friend of mine, one of my sorority sisters is wanting to get, I don't know if it's an award or recognition of some kind, but she's an attorney in Jacksonville, and, I vote for her every day. And then there's another friend of mine that, has this amazing costume, and I'll link it so if anybody wants to vote for them, because why not? Shit. Halloween costume, and I don't know what she gets other than, bragging rights at this point, because the costume is so good, would be sufficient for somebody like me. And then I have my little Fab over 40 contest, because I'm trying to raise this money for this Blixel project, whatever, which kind of ties into vote too, because, I'm applying for all of these grants, and usually it's been a long time since I have been on that, in that particular mode of selection panel. I might be, I've been more in the whole, precursor before somebody actually, I help weed it out. I'll read, the proposals or whatever. but I haven't been in the room where you actually vote. But usually, a lot of times, that's how it ends up working out, is you actually just vote. That get presented. But ultimately, it comes down to a vote. So I'm like, okay, this is something that is repeating itself in my life. Okay, this is a symbol. This is something that I need to consider symbolically, because it's a message that's being communicated very often. So again, this mid-15th century definition is formal expression of one's wish or choice with regard to a proposal, candidate, etc. Okay? Boom. We also have in the 1500s, so, a century after this kind of gets introduced as a concept in the way that I just defined it in the 15th century, the 16th century, the 1560s, in fact, it expands to vow to do something. So that the vote is a vow to do something. And immediately when I found that out, I was like, wait, so our vote is supposed to vow to do something. And I've mentioned this before as a rubric for research or thinking, is this investigation of the opposite. Just the investigation. I might have done vote before, but it's hitting different, and why not do it again? Because we can always learn more from it. Comes from Latin, votum, vow, wish, promise to a god, solemn pledge, or dedication. So I'm like, wait a minute. I feel like in my mind, those, like the way I've always thought of the word vote is that in fact the person that I'm selecting is actually going to be doing these actions. That they are vowing. They end up having to take an oath of office oftentimes. But I'm like, but the action of voting for them actually comes from this Latin. Again, this is just the DNA. Those things don't go away just because our usage has changed. And the people who are crafting these things, like, you've got to remember that the people that were reading and writing at, let's just talk about the United States, since that's the context of in which I'm speaking from. All of these people took Latin, literally. Like, that was a part of how you were educated. So it wasn't even like they didn't know about that DNA. They knew about it. Because it was a very typical portion of their education. And so I am to consider that the intention was not to have each of us individually taking a vow, a wish, a promise to a God, solemn pledge, a dedication. And I don't feel like people consider this in the action of using the word and in enacting it in the 21st century. I don't think that we are made aware about how serious, actually, that this isn't just like a wish, a formal expression of one's wish or choice with regard to a proposal or a candidate, but it has this real steeped relationship with ritual that involves a promise to a God, a dedication, a pledge. Past participle of VOVERE, a promise to dedicate. And again, it was like, it seems so backwards. It seems like, in fact, really, candidates should be voting for us. They should be enacting a choice to dedicate themselves to us, to vow to us, to pledge to us. But that's not what's enacted. It seems like the roles are reversed. Again, I told you what my stance is. I told you what my stance is. But that does not mean that I'm suggesting that you agree with my personal expression in the 21st century not to vote. But I find it intriguing that this is where this stuff comes from. So we have, even before this 1500s and 1400s, we have around 1300, which is a lot of where this, many of the words that I've been exploring seem to start, I guess, breaking the surface of the soil. Like if the seed, which is what I'm going to tell you next, if the seed is breaking the soil, it usually happens around the 1300s. And let's remember what was going on in the 1300s. This is still medieval times. This is this is a lot of just starting to tease upon the edges of commerce to Asia and, in a different kinds of ways. But it is related to vow, which is the progenitor of vote is a vow. And like I said, I just think that that's funny that it's like we're pledging our allegiance, we're pledging our dedication, we're making a solemn promise to these people, to these individuals, when it really, in my mind, should be the opposite. That their dedication should be enacted more explicitly. I feel like it's like paying your wedding photographer before the day of the wedding. Nobody does that. Nobody does that. You pay the day of the wedding because anything could happen, right? Anything could happen. You might put a deposit. Put a deposit, but you do not pay this person because they could just decide not to show up. But that's what I feel like happens. That we pay our deposit. We don't even pay. We pay in full with the vote because we're making a vow, a solemn pledge. And then once they're in there, they can opt not to do it. Come through with the promise. Proto-Indo-European root. So we're always going to get here. We're always going to get to the Proto-Indo-European root, which is spelled WEGWH. So, it's like, who knows? Who knows? It's such an elemental sound. It's like we're talking about cores of things, nuggets. So I don't even know how to pronounce it, but I'm sure it's something with, cool whip. Anyway. But it means, this Proto-Indo-European root means to speak solemnly vow or preach. So again, there is a real it's not so secular, the relationship between a vow and a vote. It's not this thing that is intended or actually communicates at its core a casual relationship. Something that is exterior in some way. It's very, it's metaphysical. It's multidimensional. A solemn promise to a God. A promise to a God is inherently multidimensional. But it always feels really flat when people talk about that. When they talk about voting. The issues that they talk about when they decide that they are going to participate as a voter. And then that means that we miss out on what we really, because we are, when we enact it, it kind of goes back to what I was saying at the beginning of this woo-woo word when I was talking about the hangman, and how if you're going to change your perspective, you have to do this over a period of time in small ways, but over and over and over again. It accrues. And I feel like we've been accruing this dedication to these gods, these promises to these gods, when actually a change in perspective would be the other way around. It also has evidence in Sanskrit and Greek. So, just so you know, Sanskrit and Greek are older than Latin. They're older than English, German. They're older than these languages. There's a space that may or may not be outside of this Proto-Indo-European root. But I thought that it was really interesting that there is a relationship between Sanskrit and Greek. Sanskrit with the word VAGHAT, VAGHAT, which means, I'm about to bust your head wide open, one who offers sacrifice. Why are we the ones offering the sacrifice? What do we get out of the sacrifice? This is even more tangible for me in the information age, because through those votes, it's getting information. It's getting very explicit information that we're given these sacrifices every time. And what are we getting in return? You sacrifice to a God because the God makes the crops come in. Of course, there's going to be exceptions to the rule. Maybe you need to be punished, whatever. But if it's not coming through, you don't make the sacrifice. The sacrifice, especially when it is a sacrifice, it has to work. Again, I'm just saying that this Sanskrit, this Greek, these are fertilizer for the words that we use all the time. they're the great grandparents of these words that we are using and that are used on us and that we're in, that are everywhere, that are on stickers, posters, media, printed, embroidered, spoken, enacted. And that's the thing, is that we have to think of this multidimensionally. Like, we're just pulling a lever, right? But are we also making a sacrifice? Because that doesn't go away just because we don't know it. And also a vow or a wish in Greek, it's very, like, it's a lot of it's EUKHE and then EUKHOMAI. So of course, who knows how that's actually pronounced? But my goodness, vow, wish, I pray. There is a real, it's like, if you withhold this, what happens? You know, like American Gods and like lots of books. There is a graphic novel series called Fables. If you haven't read it, I mean, I would highly recommend it. I mean, but I just like that kind of stuff. But one of the most important aspects of the world of these fables, which are basically, it's an ongoing, maybe it's not ongoing anymore, but because I can't remember. They have so many offshoots that I don't know if there was a kibosh on it. Anyway, but one of the major tenets of this universe, as illustrated through the Fables series, is that if nobody believes you or remembers you, that's the true death. If nobody speaks your name, if nobody enacts a sacrifice, if nobody makes a vow to your personhood, then that's where the danger lies. And so I think that we forget this power because we're so used to a contemporary definition, which is formal expression of one's wish or choice with regard to a proposal, candidate, etc. That's what we think it is. We don't consider it as a vow. We don't consider it as a dedication. We don't consider it as a sacrifice. We don't consider it as a prayer. And I'm just suggesting, if you incorporate that, what would be your relationship with it? Would your perspective change? Food for thought as usual. I'm going to get to some work because I got to find ways to fight these stupid ass ideas that are supposedly reflective of my age, stage, gender, nationality, race, class, color, all of that. So I do need to get back to that, but I just want to share that in this moment where we're being told that vote. Because there's something else going on, I think. Do your research. Do your research. Until then, until the next time, maybe I'll actually have it ready for next Wednesday, another woo-woo word. Maybe I can really do the woo-woo word Wednesdays because it rolls off the tongue so easily. I love you. I love you. I love you. Until the next time, peace. Wait, what? Oh, boom.